Hey, book friends, it's Caitlin and Tishka here from Spill the Reads. I hope everyone's having a nice holiday season. I've been looking at all the books I read this year and I've been trying to categorize them to make some end of year wrap up videos. So, in today's video, I'm going to share 15 of the best books that I read this year without giving any spoilers away. So, let's get started. The first book I want to talk about is Project Hail Mary. I don't usually read a whole lot of sci fi, but I'm trying to avoid not reading certain books just because I don't usually read that genre. And I'm so glad that I read this book because it was one of the best books I read all year. It's like rare that I feel so wrapped up in a story that, like, you feel like you might die if you don't find out what happens in the end. This book was just so suspenseful, and it's probably like has the best ending of any book I've ever read. I was just so touched by it, and I did cry a lot, and just I got so emotional. And I'm really surprised because I will say that the scientific writing in this book is kind of hard to follow, and I felt like it was kind of dry. And so I'm just so amazed that it managed to give me such a strong reaction, even though like I didn't even really like the writing style that much. So wow, props to Andy Weir, and I cannot wait to see the movie, but I'm also terrified they're going to make Rocky into some like CGI monstrosity. And he's my favorite character, so I hope that doesn't happen. Let me know if you've read this book. The Resort by Sarah Ochs was probably one of my favorite travel thrillers that I read this year. This is one of my favorite types of genres, and it's about this diving school in Thailand, and we have like a body of one of the divers that is found, and everyone at the diving school, they're all like shady expats from all over the world. Everyone seems to have kind of like a motive, and it just has really good characters and an amazing reveal at the end of who the killer was. I never would have guessed it. I read this when I was in Thailand on vacation, and it just made my trip that much more exciting. The Midnight Feast is definitely my favorite Lucy Foley book that I've read so far. This is about the opening weekend of this fancy resort called the Manor, and it ends in bloodshed and a fire because that's how the book starts. And so we backtrack to see like what happened, and the owner, who reminds me of like Regina George, but if she were like a wellness guru, she is just a horrible person. We find out about like all the secrets and like bad stuff that she's done in her life to different people. And we have like this group called the Birds, and they're supposed to like enact justice on people. And yeah, it just everything is really explosive. Like there's so many big reveals at the end, and everything ties up really nicely. I just absolutely love this story. Let me know if you've read it. I swear, 2024 is the year that I've discovered that I like love horror, and I'm pretty surprised because I was reading mostly thrillers, and then I started following some like horror recommendations and found out that I love this genre. So there's this book that I read called The Night Guest. It's a short Icelandic thriller that literally I was so invested in the story that I didn't even like glance at how many pages it was. So when it ends really abruptly, like I was just so shocked because I wanted to keep reading. Like I could have read this book if it were like 20 times as long. I loved it. It's about this woman who is waking up with like bruises and cuts and injuries, and she feels like she might be going places at night, like sleepwalking, but what is actually happening is like way more sinister. This book is so scary and shocking and just like addictive, but also the voice is very, very funny. I love it. But if you are really sensitive to cats, just maybe be wary about this and read some reviews on Goodreads before. Oh, Vladimir, this is a book that will live on in my heart forever. I absolutely loved it. It's about this professor. They never name her. So she's a like a literature professor at this kind of artsy elite college, and her husband, who she's kind of loosely still married to, but they have like an open relationship, he is being investigated for like inappropriate sexual behavior with students. And meanwhile, there's this new professor named Vladimir who arrives, and he's like really sexy and mysterious and like much younger, and she just loses her mind. She becomes obsessed with him, and the whole book is like told from her point of view. And so she's like going crazy on the inside, but on the outside, she's like cool as a cucumber, still like doing her job well and everything. And we just watch her unravel from this obsession with him, and everything like culminates in this like big explosive moment that is just so hilarious. I just love this book so much. I really want to read it again, and like check out this cover. Best cover ever. Let me know if you've read this one or if you have similar book recommendations. This is also the year that I discovered cozy fantasy books. Legends and Lattes is amazing. This is about this female orc who gives up a life of violence and bloodshed, and she moves to this town and starts a coffee shop slash bakery, but no one in the town knows what coffee is. And so if you are a baker or a coffee lover, you'll just love this. The descriptions of like everything in the cafe are just beautiful and like mouth-watering. There's also this side romantic plot that is just really cute. I just love this book. Let me know if you have any other recommendations for other cozy fantasy books. The Rachel Incident is a literary fiction book that I absolutely love this year. It makes me want to become Irish, and if I have a son, to name him James. This is a hard one to talk about without giving spoilers away, so I'll just be like very vague about the plot. It's about this girl named Rachel and like her closeted best friend. They work in a bookshop in Cork. I have to go to Cork after reading this. And Rachel has this obsession with one of her professors, but whether or not he's interested in her, we find out in the book. This is like a beautiful story of friendship and love and just like finding yourself, even through like hard times. I just loved it so much. Like it really touched me, and I really enjoyed like reading about like Irish issues, like being gay in Ireland, like abortion in Ireland. And it's just really a really special book that I already want to read again. Let me know if you've read it. I couldn't ignore Verity this year, you guys. I'm definitely team Verity. It's worth the hype. I really love this romantic thriller. If you haven't read it already, it's about this struggling author who ends up moving into this family's house to finish writing a series because this other author is like on bed rest, and she discovers all of these secrets about the author, and we don't know if the author is innocent or guilty. And she also starts like falling in love with Verity's husband, and it's just very steamy and terrifying and a really addictive book. I cannot wait to see this come to the big screen starring Anne Hathaway. I just love this book so much. I love the ambiguous ending at the end, but I feel like we really know who the villain is, but I like that the author leaves it up to us to decide. Let me know if you think this book lives up to the hype. The Fetishist by Katherine Min is hands down one of the best books that I've ever read. The topics are pretty dark, and you might not think it would be all that entertaining or like fun to read, but I can promise you that it really is. This is a story about this Japanese American punk rock singer, and she is trying to murder this fetishist that she blames for the death of her mom. And the book just like takes us through basically everything that happened in the past and in the present. Daniel, who is like the Asian fetishist, by the way, everyone is like a musician. We see like how he became the guy that he is, this philandering musician, and just like the horrible things that he's done to like Asian women. And you can really feel that this book was like written from personal experience. And I was just really fascinated by the author's description of like what it's like to be fetishized for your race. The writing is just incredible. Like it still manages to be funny even though the topic is really dark. And I just like really, really love this book. It's really incredible. It's also worth mentioning that this book was published after her death. She wrote the manuscript, and then it was found by her daughter, who then got it published. So I just think that's really special. Big Swiss was one of my favorite books this year. It's one of those like quirky books that you either love or hate, and I happen to be on the side that loves it. This book had me laughing the entire time. It's about this transcriptionist in upstate New York, and she takes a job transcribing sessions for this like sex therapist. She becomes obsessed with one of his patients who she names Big Swiss because she's like tall and from Switzerland. And she ends up like meeting her in real life and realizing that like this is Big Swiss. And they have this like really strange affair. And I just love this book to pieces. It had me like laughing the entire time and I was just obsessed with it. I can't wait to see this played out on the big screen. We don't have a lot of information about the adaptation, but I think it's being turned into a show starring Jodie Comer. So yeah, I cannot wait to see that. Darling Girls by Sally Hepworth is an absolutely amazing crime mystery book. This is about these three foster sisters in Australia who grew up in this horrible foster home and are now kind of like damaged goods as adults. And they find out that a body was discovered underneath the house where they grew up in. And so the book like slowly takes us through what happened in the past and like whose body this is and how it affects them in the present. And it's just absolutely incredible. I loved these sisters and just seeing how they bonded together through like trauma and how they're able to like get through the present with this like really strong sisterhood. It's really entertaining and I just love the story so much. I have to talk about the book that was basically my entire personality for at least 4 months this year. The Idea of You. Wow. So, if you happen to miss this one, this is a story about a woman who's approaching 40 and how she falls in love with a guy from a boy band that her daughter likes. And it just takes us through their relationship and a very upsetting ending that made me cry like really hard. I was so like into everything that followed this, the movie, the August Moon soundtrack. Then I re-listened to like the audiobook and yeah, I made some other videos comparing the book to the movie, but I just love this story so much. Like I just really identified with Solène and I just really support this book and I really hope that the author writes a sequel because I'd be very interested in finding out what happens with Solène and Hayes. By far, one of the best books I read this year was So Thirsty by Rachel Harrison. This book just had absolutely everything I could ever dream of in one book. It's like horror, but also vampires and like feminist fiction. And it just made me laugh and cry. And I love the story of female friendship and just like becoming your best self, not letting anything stop you as a woman in your 30s. It's about these two best friends who are kind of opposites. They go to this hotel for one of their birthdays. There they meet some vampires. Yeah, it's just really chaotic and amazing and I just absolutely loved it. I can't wait to read more books by her. I read a lot of books this year that were really hyped up, and some of them lived up to the hype, others didn't. But one that I really feel like deserves all the attention that it's getting is The God of the Woods by Liz Moore. This is a story about this summer camp and these two families. The daughter of this rich family ends up going missing, and it turns out that her brother went missing and was never found decades before. And so the book, it's very long and it takes us through many different characters' perspectives and different like eras, but it just takes us through this mystery and we discover what happened to her and what happened to her brother. And it's just a book you can really sink your teeth into. It's just a really high quality read, very atmospheric. It made me think a lot about going to summer camp in the forest when I was growing up. And I just really love this book. I never could have guessed what happened at the end. It really blew my mind. I had so many like wild ideas about what happened, and none of them were even close. So I really like this book. I think it definitely lives up to the hype. Hands down, the absolute best book that I read this year was Hello, Beautiful. I'm so glad that this book is getting all of the attention that it deserves because it just shook me. And I'm going to try not to cry just talking about it because even just thinking about the characters like gets me all worked up emotionally. I have never connected to a book so much. This is like a story about this family and these sisters and this guy named William, and how they kind of like intersect in each other's lives. And it takes place over like the course of their like adulthood, and we just see all of the issues that they deal with, and they go through all these like hard times, and it's just such a beautiful story. I just absolutely loved it. Let me know if you read that one and if you think it deserves all the attention it's getting. And hey, thanks for watching this video today. I'll be sharing some more like wrap up videos throughout the end of the year about the best books that I read this year throughout different genres. And we'll see you next time. Bye.